Alcatraz Escape. By 1962, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers had become some of the most troublesome inmates inside Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. Located on an island surrounded by freezing waters and powerful currents, Alcatraz was considered escape-proof. Most prisoners believed leaving the prison alive was impossible, but for months the three men secretly worked on a plan. Using sharpened spoons and homemade tools, they slowly chipped away at the concrete surrounding the ventilation grates in their cells. To hide the damage from guards, they painted fake walls and covered the openings. At night, they climbed into a hidden maintenance corridor behind the cells, where they secretly built a raft and life jackets from more than 50 stolen raincoats. To buy even more time, they created realistic dummy heads using soap, toilet paper, paint, and real human hair collected from the prison barbershop. On the night of June 11th, 1962, they placed the dummy heads in their beds, crawled through the openings, climbed onto the roof, and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, guards discovered the fake heads and realized the inmates were gone. One of the largest manhunts in American history followed. Boats, helicopters, and FBI agents searched the waters surrounding the island, but the three men were never found. To this day, nobody knows for certain whether they drowned or successfully escaped, making it one of history's greatest prison mysteries. El Chapo's Tunnel Escape. By 2015, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was one of the most powerful and notorious drug traffickers in the world. After years on the run, he had finally been captured and placed inside Altiplano, Mexico's highest security prison. The facility was specifically designed to hold dangerous criminals, with constant surveillance and strict security measures intended to prevent any possibility of escape. But while authorities believed El Chapo was locked away for good, a sophisticated operation was already underway outside the prison walls. For months, workers secretly constructed a tunnel stretching more than a mile beneath the prison. The underground passage featured electric lighting, ventilation systems, and even a motorcycle mounted on rails to transport supplies and speed up movement. On July 11, 2015, surveillance cameras recorded El Chapo walking into the shower area of his cell. The location had a small blind spot where cameras could not directly observe him. Within minutes, he disappeared from view. Guards initially believed nothing was unusual, but when they entered the cell, he was gone. Beneath the shower was a hidden opening leading directly into the tunnel. El Chapo climbed down a ladder and made his way through the underground passage to freedom. The escape shocked the world and embarrassed Mexican authorities. Less than 6 months later, however, a massive manhunt led to his recapture, ending one of the most audacious prison escapes in modern history. Vasilis Paleokostas. By the early 2000s, Vasilis Paleokostas had become one of Greece's most notorious fugitives. After years of robberies and run-ins with the law, he was captured and sent to Korydallos prison, one of the country's most secure facilities. Authorities believed his days on the run were finally over. On June 4, 2006, a helicopter suddenly appeared above the prison yard and descended in broad daylight. Before guards could react, Paleokostas rushed toward the aircraft and climbed aboard. Within seconds, the helicopter lifted off, carrying him to freedom. The daring escape shocked the country and triggered a massive manhunt. 2 years later, authorities finally captured him and returned him to the same prison. Security was tightened, and officials were determined to prevent another escape. But on February 22, 2009, the impossible happened. Another helicopter appeared above Korydallos prison. Once again, Paleokostas made his way to the aircraft and escaped in full view of prison staff. The fact that he had escaped the same prison twice using nearly the same method became one of the most embarrassing security failures in modern prison history. Despite years of investigations and reported sightings, Paleokostas has never been captured again. His twin helicopter escapes remain among the most unbelievable prison break stories ever recorded. Ted Bundy's jail escape. Most prisoners would not get a second chance. Ted Bundy did. After being returned to custody, Bundy was placed inside the Garfield County Jail in Colorado. Security was increased, but Bundy spent months carefully studying the building and identifying weaknesses. He began losing weight intentionally so he could fit through a small opening above his cell. Night after night, he used a homemade tool to widen a hole in the ceiling. Above his cell was a crawl space that connected to other parts of the building. On the evening of December the 30th, 1977, Bundy finally put his plan into action. After climbing through the opening, he moved through the ceiling space and entered the jailer's apartment while the occupants were away. From there, he simply walked out the front door and disappeared into the night. The escape triggered a nationwide manhunt. Bundy traveled across several states before eventually reaching Florida. During the weeks that followed, he committed additional crimes before finally being captured once again. His second escape remains one of the most infamous failures in American prison history. John Dillinger's wooden gun escape. In 1934, John Dillinger was already America's most famous bank robber. Newspapers followed his every move, and law enforcement agencies across the country were desperate to stop him. After being captured in Arizona, he was transferred to a jail in Crown Point, Indiana, which authorities proudly described as escape-proof. Dillinger had other ideas. According to popular accounts, he secretly carved a fake pistol from a piece of wood and darkened it with shoe polish to make it appear real. When the opportunity presented itself, he allegedly used the fake weapon to intimidate guards and take control of the jail. Whether the gun was actually wooden or obtained through other means remains debated by historians. What is certain is that Dillinger managed to walk out of the supposedly secure facility and steal the sheriff's vehicle during his escape. The breakout humiliated authorities and transformed Dillinger into a national celebrity. His freedom would not last long, however. Just a few months later, federal agents tracked him down outside a Chicago theater, where his criminal career finally came to an end. Billy Hayes. In 1970, American student Billy Hayes was arrested in Turkey after attempting to smuggle hashish out of the country. Initially expecting a relatively short sentence, Hayes was shocked when his punishment was dramatically increased, leaving him facing many years behind bars. As time passed, Hayes became increasingly desperate to escape. He was transferred between various prisons and witnessed harsh conditions that strengthened his determination to regain his freedom. After years of planning, Hayes seized an opportunity during a prison transfer. He escaped custody and began a dangerous journey across unfamiliar territory. Avoiding authorities at every turn, he traveled through remote areas and eventually crossed into neighboring countries. After reaching safety, Hayes returned to the United States and shared his story with the world. His memoir later inspired the film Midnight Express, turning his prison break into one of the most famous escape stories ever told. Pascal Paillet. Pascal Paillet became famous for turning prison escapes into an art form. Convicted for his role in a violent robbery and murder, Paillet was sentenced to a lengthy prison term and sent to Luynes prison near Marseille, France. His most famous escape occurred on October 12, 2001, and just like Vasilis Paleokostas, he used a helicopter that suddenly appeared overhead and descended directly into the facility. The operation had been carefully coordinated by accomplices outside the prison, who had hijacked the aircraft specifically for the escape. Within moments, Paillet rushed toward the helicopter and climbed aboard. Before guards could react, the aircraft lifted off and disappeared into the sky. The daring breakout stunned French authorities and attracted international attention, becoming one of the most famous helicopter prison escapes ever recorded. For nearly 2 years, Paillet managed to evade capture while remaining one of France's most wanted fugitives. His freedom finally came to an end on April 16, 2003, when police tracked him down and arrested him in Spain. Even more remarkably, Paillet's story did not end there. After being returned to prison, he would later be involved in additional helicopter escape operations, earning a reputation as one of history's most daring and inventive prison escape artists. Maze Prison Escape. By 1983, Maze Prison in Northern Ireland held many members of the Irish Republican Army and was considered one of the most secure prisons in Europe. Despite its formidable reputation, inmates inside the facility spent months organizing an ambitious escape plan. Weapons were secretly smuggled into the prison and distributed among selected prisoners. On September 25th, the operation began. Inmates quickly overpowered guards and seized control of part of the facility. Using threats and force, they commandeered a prison food delivery truck and headed toward the main exit. Chaos erupted as prison staff struggled to understand what was happening. 38 prisoners ultimately escaped, making it the largest prison break in British history during the 20th century. The incident generated worldwide headlines and exposed serious vulnerabilities in one of the country's most secure facilities. Richard, Matt, and David Sweat. In 2015, convicted murderers Richard, Matt, and David Sweat were serving life sentences at Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. From the outside, the prison appeared impossible to escape. Inside, however, the two inmates were quietly working on an elaborate plan. Using smuggled tools, they spent months cutting through steel walls hidden behind their cells. Every night, they carefully removed pieces of metal and concealed evidence of their work from prison staff. After breaching the walls, they entered a maze of maintenance tunnels beneath the prison, crawling through pipes and narrow passageways. They eventually reached an exterior manhole beyond the prison perimeter. When guards discovered the empty cells, a massive manhunt began involving hundreds of officers, helicopters, and tracking teams. For weeks, the two fugitives remained at large. The search ended when Richard Matt was located and shot by authorities. Days later, David Sweat was captured after being wounded during an attempted escape. Their breakout remains one of the most extraordinary prison escapes in recent American history. Frank Abagnale. Before becoming famous as the inspiration for Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale built his reputation through deception rather than violence. Throughout the 1960s, he successfully posed as an airline pilot, doctor, lawyer, and numerous other professionals, while committing financial fraud across multiple countries. As authorities closed in, Abagnale repeatedly found creative ways to evade capture. During one transfer, he convinced airline personnel that he was part of a flight crew and slipped away from supervision. On another occasion, he exploited weaknesses in security procedures to escape federal custody. Unlike many famous fugitives, Abagnale relied on intelligence and confidence rather than force. His ability to manipulate systems and people allowed him to stay ahead of investigators for years. Eventually, his luck ran out and he was arrested. However, his remarkable story later made him one of the most famous con artists in history, proving that sometimes the most effective escape tool isn't a weapon or a tunnel, it's persuasion.